Right now, at this very moment, Iran has missiles pointed at every capital in the Middle East. Riyadh, Baghdad, Tel Aviv, Ankara, all within range. But here's the question nobody wants to answer out loud. How far can they actually go? Because what Iran's enemies fear isn't just the missiles they can see. It's the ones they can't. And in the last decade, quietly, systematically, in tunnels dug hundreds of meters underground, Iran has been building something the world was never supposed to discover. Today, we pull back the curtain. This is Iran's secret missile program. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why it terrifies the most powerful militaries on Earth.
The year is 1980. Iran is burning. Saddam Hussein's forces have just invaded. Iraqi jets are bombing Iranian cities. Iranian soldiers are dying, not because they lacked courage, but because they lacked weapons. The West had cut them off. America had imposed sanctions. Their Air Force, once equipped with American F-14 Tomcats, was running out of spare parts. Iran stood almost alone. And out of that desperation, a doctrine was born. If we cannot match our enemies in the air, we will strike them from the ground. The missile program was not a symbol of ambition. It was a survival strategy. Iran turned to North Korea, and North Korea, always willing to sell, handed them the Scud. The Soviet-designed Scud missile. Range just 300 kilometers. Accuracy terrible. Destructive power enough to terrorize a city. Iran didn't just buy them. They studied them. They reverse-engineered them. They made them their own. And they never stopped building.
Let's talk about what Iran actually has, because this is where it gets serious. The Shahab 3. Range, 1,300 kilometers. This was Iran's breakthrough. Built in the late 1990s, modeled on North Korea's No-Dong missile, which was itself based on Soviet technology. From central Iran, the Shahab 3 could reach Tel Aviv. It could reach Riyadh. It could reach every American base in the Persian Gulf. Iran didn't just build a few. By 2008, Western intelligence reported Iran had over 100 operational Shahab 3 missiles delivered to the IRGC. 100 missiles, ready to fire. But Iran wasn't done. The Ghadr 1, an upgraded Shahab. Range pushed to 1,800, even 2,000 kilometers. Better guidance, more precision, designed to survive modern air defenses. The Sejjil. This one changed the game. Two-stage, solid fuel. Range, 2,000 kilometers. Why does solid fuel matter? Because liquid-fueled missiles take time to prepare. They need to be fueled before launch, and that fueling process can be spotted by satellites. Solid fuel missiles are always ready. Iran tested the Sejjil in 2008, then improved it, then mass-produced it. And then came the missiles that really sent shockwaves through Western intelligence agencies. The Khorramshahr, named after a city, carrying the weight of history. Range, officially, 2,000 kilometers. But here is the secret that France, Germany, and the United Kingdom formally reported to the United Nations. With a lighter warhead, the Khorramshahr could reach 3,000 kilometers. 3,000 kilometers from Tehran puts southeastern Europe in range. Athens, Sofia, Bucharest. Not just the Middle East anymore. The Kheibar Shekan, unveiled in 2022. Third generation, solid fuel. Range 1,450 kilometers. But what makes it special isn't the range. It's the terminal maneuverability. As it re-enters the atmosphere, the warhead maneuvers. It twists,
it shifts its path. That is specifically designed to defeat missile defense systems like Israel's Arrow 3 or America's THAAD. It hits at Mach 2 to Mach 3. By the time a defense system reacts, it may already be too late. The Fattah. And then, in 2023, Iran unveiled something that made the world stop. The Fattah 1, Iran's first claimed hypersonic missile. Mach 13 speeds. Range, 1,400 kilometers. Iran called it uninterceptable. Western analysts debated the technical claims, but the intent was clear. Iran was telling the world, your defenses cannot stop us.
Here is something that almost nobody talks about. Before 2024, Iran had officially imposed a self-limit on its missile range, 2,000 kilometers. It sounds like a concession, a gesture of restraint, but it wasn't. The IRGC commanders had been pushing Supreme Leader Khamenei for years to extend the range to 5,000 kilometers. He refused. He kept the cap at 2,000. But the engineers kept building, and the Khorramshahr, publicly announced as a 2,000-kilometer missile, was almost certainly capable of much more. Iran was playing a game, announcing one range, building another. Now here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Most of what we've discussed so far, the world can see. Parades, tests, official announcements. But Iran has spent decades building something that cannot be seen from the sky. Underground missile cities, carved into mountains, reinforced with concrete. Some buried hundreds of meters below the surface. The IRGC calls them missile towns. Satellite imagery has revealed massive complexes near Tehran, at Khorramshahr and Modaris. Hundreds of bunkers, storage tunnels, launch tunnels. The missiles sit underground on mobile launchers, ready to roll out, fire, and disappear back underground before an enemy can respond. This is not science fiction. Iran has shown footage of these underground bases on purpose. Because the message isn't just military. The message is, you cannot destroy what you cannot find. Even in 2025, when Israel launched its largest ever strikes on Iran's missile infrastructure, U.S. intelligence could only confirm destruction of roughly 1/3 of Iran's missile arsenal. 2/3 remained. Here is a number that should stop you cold. Before the wars of 2024 and 2025, U.S. Central Command assessed that Iran possessed over 3,000 ballistic missiles. 3,000. More than any other country in the Middle East, by far. After the wars, after Israeli strikes specifically targeting missile factories and storage sites, Western intelligence estimated Iran still had approximately 1,500 to 2,000 missiles remaining. And by late 2025, satellite imagery showed Iran had already begun replenishing. Ships carrying sodium perchlorate, the key ingredient for solid rocket fuel, were arriving at Iranian ports from China. One shipment alone, 1,000 tons, enough to produce fuel for 260 Kheibar Shekan missiles. Iran wasn't slowing down. Iran was restocking. Let's look at the map. This is what makes Iran's missile program uniquely dangerous. Not just the missiles, but the geography. Iran sits at the center of a web of conflict. Draw a circle of 2,000 kilometers from Tehran. Inside that circle, Tel Aviv, Israel's largest city, 1,600 kilometers. Reachable by Ghadr, Khorramshahr, Sejjil, Kheibar Shekan. Riyadh, Saudi Arabia's capital, 1,400 kilometers, well within range. Abu Dhabi, 1,300 kilometers. Baghdad, less than 700 kilometers. Almost every Iranian missile can reach it. Kabul, 1,400 kilometers. Islamabad, approximately 1,800 kilometers, within theoretical range. Ankara, Turkey's capital, 1,800 kilometers. Now extend that circle. With the Khorramshahr at 3,000 kilometers, you add Athens, Sofia, Bucharest, parts of southern Europe. And then, in March 2026, something changed everything. Iran fired ballistic missiles toward Diego Garcia, an American and British military base in the Indian Ocean, nearly 4,000 kilometers from Iran. The Israeli military chief publicly confirmed the missile had a range of 4,000 kilometers. That range puts Berlin in reach. Paris, Rome. The self-imposed 2,000-kilometer cap? Gone. Iran had been hiding its true capabilities all along.
In October 2025, after Khamenei's death, reports emerged from Iranian sources citing the ISPI think tank. Iran's new leadership had allegedly authorized development of miniaturized nuclear warheads for ballistic missiles. Warheads small enough to fit on a Khorramshahr, on a Sejjil. The technical requirement, uranium enriched to 90%. How long would that take? According to analysts, given Iran's existing stockpile of 441 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, possibly just weeks, not years, weeks. A nuclear-tipped ballistic missile capable of reaching European capitals. This is no longer a theoretical concern. This is the scenario that keeps Western intelligence agencies awake at night.
For decades, Iran's missiles were mocked. Weapons of terror, analysts called them, designed to terrify cities, not destroy specific targets. And for a long time that was true. The early Shahabs were inaccurate. They could hit a city, not a building, not a military facility, just a city. But between 2024 and 2026, something changed. Iran abandoned GPS guidance, which can be jammed, and switched to Beidou 3, China's military satellite navigation system, encrypted, frequency hopping, resistant to electronic warfare. The result? Accuracy reportedly down to 5 to 10 meters. 5 to 10 meters. During the June 2025 conflict with Israel, Iranian Zulfagar missiles, guided by Beidou 3, reportedly struck specific buildings, specific radar antennas. Not just cities anymore, specific targets. Iran's missiles had graduated from weapons of terror to weapons of precision. Here is something the missile range maps don't show. Iran doesn't need to fire missiles from Iranian soil, because Iran's missiles are already positioned in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Iraq. Hezbollah in Lebanon has received hundreds of Iran-designed rockets and missiles. The Houthis in Yemen have launched Fattah 110 variants at Saudi Arabia, at the UAE, and in 2024, at ships in the Red Sea, at Israel. From Yemen, those missiles traveled over 1,700 kilometers to strike Israeli territory. Iran-backed militias in Iraq have received short-range ballistic missiles capable of hitting Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and American bases throughout the region. The entire Middle East, from Lebanon to Yemen, has become a distributed missile platform for Iran. Tehran doesn't need to put its own fingerprint on every launch. The missiles speak for themselves. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The most advanced missile defense systems on Earth, Israel's Arrow 3, America's THAAD, the Patriot, cannot intercept everything. They are expensive. Each interceptor missile costs millions of dollars. Iran's strategy is simple and brutal. Overwhelm the defenses. Fire enough missiles at once, and some will get through. In October 2024, Iran launched approximately 200 ballistic missiles at Israel in a single night.
In June 2025, 500 to 550 missiles over 12 days. Even with layers of defense, some landed, some killed people. And the cost asymmetry is staggering. Iran spends thousands of dollars producing a Kheibar Shekan. Israel and America spend millions intercepting it. Iran can sustain that exchange far longer than its enemies can afford to intercept.
In 2025, the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency published an assessment that sent shockwaves through defense communities. Iran's Space Launch Vehicle program, officially civilian, contains the technology base for an intercontinental ballistic missile. If Iran decides to pursue an ICBM capability, the DIA assessed they could have a militarily viable one by 2035. An ICBM. Range over 10,000 kilometers. Range enough to reach the United States. Now, Iran officially denies pursuing this, and the space program officially remains civilian. But the Zuljana space rocket, tested since 2021, uses solid rocket motors that are directly applicable to long-range ballistic missiles. The line between a space program and a missile program has never been thinner. So let's come back to the question we started with. How far can Iran's missiles actually reach? Officially, 2,000 kilometers. Reality? Possibly 3,000, maybe 4,000, maybe more. From a country that was forced to build its missile program from scratch, out of the rubble of the Iran-Iraq war, with sanctions cutting off every conventional military supply chain, Iran has built the largest ballistic missile arsenal in the Middle East. More than 3,000 missiles at its peak. Tunnels that cannot be seen. Warheads that can maneuver. Accuracy that can strike a single building. And a network of proxies that extends its reach from Lebanon to Yemen to Iraq. The world spent decades telling itself that Iran's missiles were weapons of fear, not power. The events of 2024, 2025, and 2026 proved otherwise. Iran's missiles aren't just pointed at its neighbors. They're pointed at a future where a small nation, isolated, sanctioned, and surrounded, tells the world's greatest powers, "You cannot ignore us. You cannot destroy us. And you cannot stop what is already in the air." If this story moved you, you are watching War and Military History, where every conflict has a cause, every border has a cost, and every war leaves something behind. Subscribe and stay with us, because history is never truly over.